Hello and welcome to your programme Q&A session that will cover the MSc Clinical Trials, which is a new programme for September 2025. We're joined by our programme leads, so we'll hopefully be able to answer all the questions you've got about the programme. We are recording this session, so please don't panic if you miss anything. We'll share that shortly afterwards for you to watch back in your own time. And again, if you think of any questions after the session, the programme administration email address is on the programme webpage for you to get in touch afterwards. So Alicia, would you like to kick off with introductions and then we'll just go around the room if that's all right?
I am Alicia and I am one of the program directors that you will see me a lot once you join the program.
Susan?
Yeah, hi, my name is Susan Lindsay. I'm also one of the programme leads and I'm a lecturer at this graduate school. I look forward to meeting you all.
And Leslie?
Hi everyone, my name is Leslie. I'm also one of the lecturers at the MVLS Graduate School and I'll be working closely with Susan, Alicia and yourselves on the programme. I'm looking forward to working with everyone.
Exciting. Alicia, would you like to give us a bit of an overview of the MSc?
So I will just share a wee presentation just to show you the program structure. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Yes. So the MSc in Clinical Trials was essentially designed in collaboration with the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and few industry partners, primarily IQVIA. So the purpose of how we develop this program was we essentially asked many employers in the clinical trials sector are they looking for in future employees that they want to hire, and what are the gaps, skill gaps in the market that they do think that graduates should have for to work in the sector of clinical trials, which, as you know, can be very broad. And after a lot of consultations, we came up with a program structure that includes these core courses. So in the UK, a master's lasts for 12 months. So this will be a full-time 12 months MSc on campus. So all of your classes, most of the lectures will be in campus in person, but we also have accessibility policies. So in case you are unable to attend your classes for some reason, we do also provide recordings, etc. And yeah, so in a 12-month master's for the clinical trial, term one will be from September mid to Christmas time till your Christmas break, which is December 23rd, usually. And during this time, we will cover 3 courses, which are all 20 credits. So in the first course, you will essentially learn anything and everything that is to do with the concept of clinical trials. What are the different types, how to actually design it, both qualitative and quantitative trials. But not only that, you will also learn the role of sponsors, for example, and other necessary stakeholders that are present till the phase of you designing your trial and submitting it for approval, for example. This will also give you access to the good clinical practice course that will be provided bespoke to you by the NHS. And this certification is essential if you want to work in any of the clinical research sector. So you will have this as part of this program already done. We will also cover PPIE, so that is patient participant involvement in groups. So hopefully we hope to provide lectures and workshops that will cover the entire area of PPIE, which is a mandatory aspect of clinical trial currently in the UK. So yeah, so this course is all about that, all about your theory and design, and with workshops of different trial types and designs that you can have. The second course will be all about monitoring and conducting a trial. So from the start to finish, once you get your trial approval, for example, you get your funds, your trial is approved by the research ethics committees in the UK. So what do you do after that? How do you actually start running the trial and what is the um, the pathway from start to finish. So this will include not only perspectives from research nurses and various other job roles that are involved in that pipeline, but we will also include trial monitoring, pharmacovigilance, etc. So all of those things will be covered in this. So it will be a very hopefully practical based, skill-based course. As part of this, you will also have an opportunity to do a site visit to our industry partners, IQVIA, and hopefully some sites in the NHS. So this will be from, if I'm not wrong, from October mid to around November. So your second course. Your third course is medical ethics, regulations, and governance. So this will be everything to do with ethics, the research ethics committees in Glasgow, the role of Health Research Authority in terms of clinical research in the UK. But not only that, we will also cover aspects of international law, and we will cover anything and everything that is to do with law, regulation, and governance in the UK and in the international sector. So audits, MHRA, we will have mock rec committees for you to learn. And we will also have mock audits, for example, as one of your assessments, so that you can get that real life experience. So that is these three courses are your first term. So after Christmas break, we go to term 2. Where your first course will be the role of a clinical trials unit. So this course will be run by the clinical trials unit that we have in Glasgow. So what a clinical trials unit does is they run the trial, but from an academic perspective. So they are the one who will anonymize your data. They will handle all of the databases, all of the data that you kind of all of the data that you need to input or produce as a result of the clinical trial. And during the clinical trial, they will build analysis pipelines, for example, and all of those things will be covered in this course. So essentially, from start of a clinical trial to closing a trial, what a clinical trial unit does, which is again very different from what the NHS does, for example, while running a trial. So this will give you that perspective. After that, we moved into a bit of management. Here we will cover the role of a clinical trials manager and the different aspects of a trial management, day-to-day running documents, how to site management, different softwares that you can use. So essentially giving you the skills to not only manage the project, but making it very specific to a clinical research study. So this will be your second course in term 2. And your final course will be communication and dissemination of trial findings. So this will be all to do with soft skills. So how do you write an SOP or standard operating protocol for a clinical trial? And how do you write a paper for a clinical trial, which is very different from your SOP? How do you publish your trial and protocol, which is again very different from the other two? So all of these different types of writing style and documents will be covered. But not only that, we will also train you how to tell people about your findings and about your trial, how to tell it to different stakeholders. For example, you are a clinical researcher and you need to convey it to your sponsors. How are you going to do that? Which would be very different to telling about your trial to the general public. And yeah, so different aspects and different key elements that you need to keep in mind. We will train you in that in your final course of term 2. So all of these courses are core, they are not options. So all of these courses are mandatory. And your term 3, which will be from May mid, it is your project or placement. And so it is a 12-week either academic projects. You can be placed in a research group, for example, who are already doing a clinical trial, so that you can work on a mini project in that. Or we also have placements within the NHS, for example, in project management group, if you want to be placed there and write your dissertation on that. So we are trying an innovative approach with our 12-week projects. So yeah, so this is the basic structure of the program that you will have in your clinical trials masters. Assessment wise, most of the assessments that all of the courses will have 2 assessments, and all of the assessments that we have designed are real world assessments. So it's not only just you um, writing exams. So we have no exams in this program. So it will be all about, for example, group activities and writing, building pipelines, writing reports, having a mock audit as one of your assignments, for example. So it will be very professional work base, so that you are prepared to just go into a workforce and start working. So we hope to give you that experience through this program. So yeah.
Thank you, Alicia. And you also touched on another wee question there, so that was good to tick 2 off in 1. Um, for the project element of it, could either yourself, Alicia, or if you want to be rest, Susan or Leslie, could you tell us a bit about how that will work? So how do students pick a topic? Are they given a topic? Yeah, just a bit about the process of it.
So usually in a master's program, we have a list of projects that either our industry partners, the NHS and the academics will provide to you ahead of time. So you will have time to choose your project. If I'm not wrong, some programs do it in January, February, some programs do it in March. So probably we will do it around February time, so that you have enough time to choose a project from that list and contact your potential supervisor. But not only that, we do encourage you to, if you really like to do something on your own, or you find this particular an academic who has not given a project, but you really want to work with them on a project, just approach them. So we have no restrictions on that, as long as you tell us that you are doing that, and as long as it follows the university policies. So it can be all up to you as to what you want to do in your project. You can either, and even if you choose a project from the list, there are ways, if you don't like the project, to speak to your supervisor if you can modify it, for example, or work on something else. So there are many ways in which you can choose a project. So we definitely encourage you to reach out to people if you really want to work in that. If there is some, for example, if you really want to work with someone in the clinical trials unit, just reach out to them, see if they're willing to offer you a placement or a project for 12 weeks, which it runs from mid-May to, so you have to usually submit around August, beginning of August to mid-August. And yeah, so it is kind of flexible, as long as we meet all of the intended learning outcomes and all of the university policies are followed and the academic integrity is upheld. So yeah.
Great. I'll maybe just stop sharing your screen if that's all right, just
Yes.
so we can see your faces.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then just a few other questions that we've got. So I don't know if it's actually confirmed yet, because I suppose classes are new, but do we know where the classes are going to be held on campus?
Yeah. Predominantly they'll be at Gilmore Hill. The majority of the teaching sessions will be on the main campus.
Perfect. I suppose
In
that just
person.
helps. That just helps if people are looking for accommodation, just to see where they should be nearby. And we're always asked it, and I know it's a really difficult question to answer, but what does a typical week look like for an MSc? So how often should students expect to be in class, on campus? Could you tell us a wee bit about that?
Sure. I mean, every week might be slightly different. Sorry, Leslie, do you want to?
No, it's quite noisy where I am, so probably better if you go, and then if there's anything to add, I'll chip in.
Yeah, sure. So every week is probably slightly different. You won't have set days. So some days you might be in 3 days a week. It could be that it's maybe a couple of hours of lectures one day. But the thing is, you have to be fairly flexible, because it isn't set to say Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Every week could be slightly different. And with this type of course, we are embedding a lot of site visits and full day training. So you need to have a level of flexibility in terms of your timetable. But there is no 2 weeks that might be identical. But I would say you'd probably be expected to be on campus about 10 hours a week. Would that be reasonable guesstimate in terms of teaching hours.
Perfect. And I suppose that'll all become clearer once registration opens around August time and you start getting your timetable out. And then in terms of class material, do students get access to that before a kind of lecture scheduled so that they can kind of prep beforehand?
Yeah, we do try to make sure that lecture content, slides and material are available in advance. Leslie, you want to put in towards
Yeah,
that?
I would say just exactly the same as what Susan said. If we've got it available, it will definitely be made available. What I would say is there'll always be a session outline available beforehand. So obviously some of our sessions are taught by externals, and if they don't give us the content before then we're quite limited. But we will always have on the Moodle for each course when the sessions are, what's preparatory work, what the session might look like in terms of what's going to happen on the day. So that will all be available. I would say the same for the assessment. Normally we try and have right from the beginning of the course, the assessments available so that students can engage with that and have a good look at that and get familiar with that before any of the taught components or the tutorials to support the assessment.
Great. No surprises then for anybody. And then we're always asked as well, and I know this is maybe quite difficult, but in terms of preparing to start your studies in September, is there anything you would recommend students do, be it academically wise or just practicalities of things?
There is it ADD? Do Welcome to Glasgow postgraduate information and training. I think it's opportunities for postgraduate students to meet each other in advance of starting. So if you have came to Glasgow in advance, and actually, I think the postgraduate is online. I might be wrong with that. I think undergraduate's in person, but there is a postgraduate support provided by an academic development team, which we could probably make available to students.
And in terms of reading or anything, is there anything that you would recommend do in terms of like the actual content? No, or is it just a case of wait till you're here?
Yeah, I would just wait until you're here, give yourself a chance, wait till you're here, suss it all out, and then everything will be available that they need to do beforehand would be there. But there's no expectations of pre-reading or anything like that before they come.
Great. I think that's sometimes people's kind of a bit nervous because they maybe finishing their undergraduate and thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to fit in all this extra reading? Something that I like, somebody recommended is just getting yourself set up with your accommodation, doctors, all the boring stuff, so you can then forget about it. And then if you need it, you've got it rather than trying to do that alongside your studies. And in terms of career prospects after the MSc, what kind of careers do you see students being able to go on to after they complete their MSc?
So, career-wise, as I mentioned earlier, the field of clinical trials is very, very broad. So you may be, for example, a project manager or someone interested in project management, or with a background of some management skills, and you come and do this program with the intention of you actually going and working as a clinical trials manager. So you can go into that role. Or even if you have no prior knowledge of management, we have designed the course, the clinical trials management course, with actual trial managers. So they will be the one who will primarily teach you all that is there to know about trial management, and technically what they wish they knew before they jumped into this career path. So you can go into that area, or you can work in academia, for example, in clinical research, if you are a doctor, for example, or someone who really wants to go into doing clinical research. So this will give you that foundation so that you know how to run your own clinical study, because more often than not, there are so many skill gaps in between that people do not know of when they are starting out their career in these areas, that it just catches them off guard, and then they have to spend probably months training up, which takes time and effort. So you can go into research, you can go into pharmacovigilance roles, you can work in the NHS has a lot of different roles. So the NHS is our National Health Board in the UK, and we have partnered with the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, which is one of the biggest health boards in Europe. So, and they hire like 45,000 people, and many of them do work in clinical research as a research nurse, for example, or in the labs, or doing day-to-day work in the CRF, which is our clinical research facility. Or you can be someone really interested in stats and you want to work in a clinical trials unit, for example, or you are really interested in data. So, this will give you the domain knowledge of you actually knowing what you are working with, and it will prepare you for that job. Or you might be someone really interested in regulations and you can go into regulatory roles with the Health Research Authority, for example, or different companies internationally that do value you having this domain knowledge and knowing all of the different ins and outs of different regulations. So we will have lectures by people who have worked internationally and set up multiple trials in China, India, the US, and they will give you an overview of how different it is compared to the UK. And yeah, so regulation, governance, audits, or you can be someone who's really interested in writing and can go into a career of medical writing. But in this case, you will have that domain knowledge. As I said, you know what you will write about, so it will give you far more advantage of actually getting hired as someone who will be writing about these studies in different companies or the university or the NHS. They do hire a lot of medcom writers. And this is not to say that you can't even switch your career. So you can go from one pathway to another. Many of us have done that. Careers are not linear. They are, they have many arms, and it's like a network. So you can just switch. You have done medcoms, or you want to move into management, things like that. So it will just equip you with so many skills that you don't have to be stuck thinking that, oh, like I do not know what to do, but this is the only path I can choose because of my degree, if that makes sense. So you can go into diverse career roles. And in Glasgow, we do focus a lot on transferable skills. So at the end of the day, if you realize that, what, I do not want to work in the field of clinical trials, you don't have to. We know many people who have gone into different career roles, but all of the skills that they have gained from the assessments, all of the writing skills, team management skills, all of the managerial skills that you will learn, and designing a pipeline, all of those things are very crucial in many other fields as well. So I'm sorry if I have just confused you a bit, but this is just so that you know how much is out there, and this will hopefully open opportunities up for you into different career paths that you might have never thought about.
I think it highlights just the diverse career paths that this
Yeah.
MSc will open for you. And we're going to teach you the whole kind of spectrum of clinical trials, and then it'll be up to you how you want to take that forward. There's just so many different career options.
Yeah, the world is your oyster. I think Alicia
That's right.
single-handedly managed to list every single potential job role. So well done. I think that is always good, isn't it? Because sometimes you are maybe a bit unsure of what you want to do, so you've got the options there. I think just the last question, just to touch on it, but we were asked about the placements, potential placements within the programme. Would that be as part of your research project, or would that be in sort of semester 1 or 2?
So the placements are essentially your project that would take part of your MSc project. There will be site visits and external training and accredited training provided by the NHS, but the actual 12-week project will be part of your, it's called a placement, but it would be your project. It could be within academia, it could be within the NHS, or it could be within industry. We aim to try and give projects that span that diverse knowledge that we've given you. Then it allows you to decide, well, like what Alicia said, is it a management project I want? Is it a PPIE project that I want? Do I see myself in industry? And so we'll give you a kind of broad range of placements that you can basically decide what suits your own personal interests best.
Great. Something to keep in mind then during your different courses, isn't it? Like
Yes.
be thinking about after what you want to do and how you can tailor your project to really help with that. Super. Well, I think we've covered lots and lots of information there, so it's a good job we've recorded the session so people can watch it back. Like I said, if you think of any further questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. The email address is on our programme webpage for you to contact us. And yeah, thanks very much to our panel for taking time out of your day. I know you're all very busy. And hopefully we'll see you all come September time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Look forward to meeting you. Bye.
Bye.